Hey everyone, welcome back to Coach Hall Writes. In this video, we're going to talk about the format of the AP Lang exam. The exam itself essentially has two sections. The multiple choice section, in which you answer 45 questions over the span of 1 hour, and then the essay or the FRQ section, which lasts 2 hours and 15 minutes. During this time, you are going to be reading your sources and passages, and you're going to be producing 3 essays: a synthesis essay, a rhetorical analysis essay, and an argument essay. In between these two sections, there is a 10-minute break. Now let's talk about scoring. When you receive your exam scores, you're going to get something called a composite score. This is going to be a number between 1 and 5. Typically, students want to aim for at least a 3, as this is considered a qualifying score. However, it's important to realize that different colleges have different expectations as far as what they will consider for credit if they're looking at your AP scores. The multiple choice is worth 45% of your composite. Since there are 45 questions, think of it like this: each multiple choice question is worth 1 point. For the essays, since you have 3 essays that are scored on a rubric that goes up to 6 points, the math is a little bit more complicated for this, but basically what they do is they take each of your essay scores and they multiply it by a determined multiplier, and then they figure out how many points you get for that. From there, they add up the points you got on both sections and convert it to the composite score of 1 to 5. When you receive your exam results, you're not actually going to know how you scored on each of your essays. You're just going to know your composite score. Now let's talk about the supplies that you'll need on test day. It's possible that your teacher or AP coordinator might give you pens and pencils, but please know that you do need them. So you can only use pencil on the multiple choice section. So if you're responsible for providing your own pencil or pencils, please make sure they have a good eraser and that they're sharpened. For the essays, you write in pen. It is okay to cross out your words if you mess up. It's no big deal. So don't use erasable pen. It needs to be blue or black ink, and the ink needs to be dark enough that it can be read. And you also want to make sure that it's not going to smear. One thing you might want to ask about is if your school provides a snack. I know that the school that I teach at does. We usually give students a really small water bottle and maybe like a little bag of pretzels or something during the 10-minute break. But if that's not provided for you and you want something, ask your teacher if it's okay and see what your school requires. On testing day, you're going to receive a number of supplies, and the people who are proctoring your test are going to tell you exactly which things you need at which point. So don't worry, the directions are all spelled out for you. But some of the things that you're going to receive are AP ID labels. You're also going to be told what your school code is. You're going to have an answer sheet for the multiple choice where you bubble in your answers. You're going to have an exam packet. This is usually shrink wrapped. And you're also going to have exam booklets, one for the multiple choice section and one for the FRQs or the essays. I believe these are also shrink wrapped as well. So there's this whole process of having to unwrap things and put stickers on things. If you've never taken an AP test, don't be alarmed. I promise they walk you through everything in the instructions. For the test, you work on one section at a time. So you're going to start with the multiple choice section. For this, on the AP Lang exam, you have 2 reading passages. Typically, these are longer and they have more questions. It does make up about half of the multiple choice questions, though. For the second half, you have 3 writing passages. These are typically shorter and have fewer questions. These are more like editing questions, whereas the reading passages ask more comprehension questions. It's important to read the provided info. So sometimes above the passage, they will have an italicized sentence that tells you a little bit of info about the passage. Don't skip over that. Make sure you read it because sometimes that info helps you understand the passage better. For the writing section, those multiple choice questions typically have a sentence above it that says, "This is a draft." That way, you know it is a writing passage and you're going to be answering questions that are more like editing. It asks you about word choice and combining sentences, things like that. Whereas for the reading section, the passages that you're looking at are usually published works, such as maybe a speech or an excerpt of a longer work of nonfiction. So those you're not editing, you're just proving that you comprehend the passage. Also, for the multiple choice section, it's important to remember that you can answer the questions in any order, so you can skip around if you want to. For some students, that does work to their benefit, but it's crucial that you make sure that you're lining up the question that you're answering to the correct row on your bubble sheet, because if you skip around and work out of order and mess up your answer sheet, that can be hugely detrimental to your score. So if you're skipping around, be super careful. One thing to remember though is that it benefits you to answer all questions, even if it's just a guess. Don't leave anything blank. For the FRQ section or the essays, you're going to have 2 hours and 15 minutes. The College Board recommends that you spend 15 minutes reading plus 40 minutes per essay. You will be notified at those time intervals and told when you have 10 minutes remaining. So they're going to tell you after 15 minutes has elapsed, and then they're going to tell you after each of the 40-minute intervals. However, you don't have to actually work at that pace. For example, you can write during the reading time. So if you don't need 15 minutes to read, then you can start writing. Or what some of my students do is they spend 10 minutes reading and annotating for the synthesis, and they sort of bank those 5 minutes to save for the rhetorical analysis passage. Basically, what I'm trying to tell you is you have a concrete amount of time to do with as you please. It is, however, important that you attempt to answer each of the essays. You're going to need a thesis, and if you're super pressed for time, at least have one solid body paragraph with evidence and commentary to try to earn some of those points. I recommend that you actually have a game plan going into the test to figure out how to play to your strengths, but I'll talk more about that at the end of this video. You do not need to spend 40 minutes per essay. Sometimes students like to spend 45 on one and 35 on another. Do what works best for you. But just know that the proctor cues you approximately every 40 minutes in order to help you keep pace. Now, I didn't mention this on the things that you'll need, but I just thought of it, so I'm going to include it here. There should be a clock in the room that you're taking the test in. However, sometimes students like to bring in a watch. It can't be a smartwatch or any kind of Fitbit, something that can send or receive messages. However, you can have a very plain wristwatch. It can be digital as long as it's not a smartwatch. A lot of my students before the exam will go to the local Walmart and they'll buy one of the $5 kids watches and they'll use that for the exam. That way they can keep pace and not have to look at the clock. I mentioned previously in the video that I think all students should have a game plan going into the exam. I actually have a video about this on my YouTube channel where I break down how you can play to your strengths in order to improve your score. I would love it if you would check that out. If you're studying for the AP Lang exam and you would like more tips, be sure to follow Coach Hall Writes on YouTube and also on TikTok. Until next time, happy writing!